So, first thing up, I'd like you to tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay, my name's Pete Giles and I'm an art director at Sony Computer Games, Cambridge.
Okay, and what does that basically mean?
It currently means that I'm kind of looking after a team of artists, and once I'm actually working on a concept project at the moment, once that project's in full production, it means that I ensure that all different artists, that their work is kind of coherent for the game, there's a coherent style and look, and actually at this early stage I'm kind of responsible for helping to define what that look is as well.
Okay. What do you think that the HD is? I don't mean in relation to gaming, but what do you think HD is generally, and what do you think the Joe in the street thinks that HD is?
I don't know, I probably found myself, if we put gaming aside and my very kind of direct practical use of HD, I'm probably in the same sort of position as a lot of guys on the street, just kind of going, okay, what kind of TV do I need for HD? You know, that seems to be the direct thing for me straight away. It's like, okay, it's a TV-based thing, is it? Yeah, do I need one of those big LCD flat screen panels? Okay, speak to one of the techie guys at work. What is that? Is it 1080p? Is that the panel? Is it the, you know? And there's a lot of kind of like technical confusion over what stuff is being punted out that my TV can receive, and what kind of signal I'm getting, and then what my panel can display, and all that kind of stuff. And then there's I'm really into film, so then the thing for me is kind of like, oh, okay, HD. Blu-ray, great, Blade Runner, it's going to be re-released, I'm going to see it in Blu-ray, cool, so that for me is kind of, I guess, what HD says to me. It's existing medium that I'm aware of that then I can see in a greater fidelity kind of thing.
So a potentially enriched entertainment experience, loosely, visually based entertainment experience?
Yeah, definitely an entertainment experience. I think of it in terms of entertainment mediums, absolutely.
So what does it mean to you in terms of your job?
It means that we've got a lot of work. It means we've got a lot of work to do fundamentally. It means that we can produce games that look amazing. So from my point of view, it's kind of like, okay, when I first started the industry, hey, James, let's do a game where you climb up this hill and you get to the top of the hill and you stare out over this amazing vista. Let's do that. Get it on the technology. Technology's not quite up. Technology's not quite up to that in terms of like how many polygons can be pushed around from a kind of gaming point of view, and also the resolution display is just not there to show that kind of stuff in focus at the distance. You just weren't able to display that kind of stuff basically. So now we've suddenly got to the point where I think the technology itself and the fact that they're using HD displays, those two things have kind of come together. So okay, great, now we can do characters with normal maps, higher detail textures, and we can display them at a resolution where your person playing the game or watching the film can see the very detail that you've spent time putting onto those characters. So I think it's just those two things have kind of happened together, and so actually for me it's kind of like HD's just become this like next step in what in terms of video games we're capable of doing, really.
Okay, and so I've got a couple of questions around, like things like, is HD output too intensive for current processors, or can current technology handle what you're shoving at?
I think it would have been considered like a massive oversight if any of the next gen consoles that are pitching in at kind of like high def images weren't capable of achieving that, if you know what I mean. So obviously Xbox and PS3 are firmly out there stating we are HD machines, and particularly PlayStation 3. So I've just worked on a game called Heavenly Sword that's displaying at 720p. There's a new game, Wipeout, which is a new version of an old PlayStation franchise, and that's coming out next January, and that's, as far as I know, because I'm not great on these things, but I think that's 1080p. I think that the machine...
What was the set of thoughts that went into the choice about 720p? Is it something to do with the fact that America may be 720p based rather than 1080? Or?
I think that it's a complex one, isn't it? Because obviously whenever you're producing a game, you've got the usual kind of balancing act that takes place. In other words, you've got the coders saying, hey, we want to have all this really complex AI, and that takes a certain amount of processing power. And you've got the artists going, hey, we want to create this amazing visual stuff. That puts certain demands on the console. So there's always a certain balancing going on there. I think in terms of 720p, it's just considered to be like, it's high def, it looks great, and it's kind of at a point where more people probably are likely to be able to to view that definition. Whereas 1080p is kind of like, I don't know, you know, at the moment, I don't really know that many people who are even running necessarily 1080p TVs and stuff. So I think 720 was kind of like, hey, it's new and exciting, it's high def, but it's not so far out there that it's kind of pointless at this point.
Okay, so I've got a converse question then. Does the clarity of a 720 or up to 1080, is the clarity limiting what you can do with on-screen visuals? And I don't mean to say what you can do with your imagination, but there are places you don't want to go because it shows too much, or?
I think the thing is that actually for us, 720p is still such a massive leap forward in terms of what we've been doing in games. You know, the other day I just went home and I just put on some old kind of Mega Drive games, just doing them just for research and for kind of gameplay purposes, and I put them up on my LCD TV and I was like, blimey, I can't believe how terrible they look. It was just unbelievable that in kind of, you know, from 93 say to 2007, this is the journey that we're on. So, I've completely forgotten my train of thought now.
It was about being limited by the fact, because you can imagine and because you can have detail. Is it limiting because somehow? All right.
No, I think I know what I was going to come to, which is that 720p has kind of like so far for us been that great pitch where we can show really high detail images, but it's not so high resolution that we can't still sort of almost ignore some incidental elements. The danger with a video game is that because the characters could potentially say look anywhere, that every single minutiae has to be equally kind of detailed and equally interesting. So if somebody chooses to wander over to this corner or they choose to wander over to that corner, you know, they need to examine everything. And I think for us, 720p was kind of like, yeah, it's great, it's very high res, isn't it? But, you know, we still don't have to worry quite as much about kind of, you know, polygon profiles and how accurately they were being displayed. And at the point at which it's 1080p, you're kind of like, there's nowhere to hide. Every single detail is up there for people to see and go, oh, do you know what? There's a slight seam between those two textures there. You know, you wouldn't have seen that at a lower resolution. I think those are kind of things that you're trying to balance up when you're trying to produce a game that looks the best it can look. And I don't think that it necessarily looks the best it can look just by saying, let's not make it 720p, let's make it 1080p. See what I mean?
Okay, so what follows from this then is, and I'll just read it off the page, how does HD imagery how has it affected the time it takes to produce a new game as compared to older stuff? And does including HD significantly infringe? Oh, it's the same question, but it's about what's it doing to the actual production model?
Okay, well again, if we were to kind of relate it back to the extreme, which was 11 years ago when I started working, and I started working as an artist on the ground, modelling environments, working on characters and that kind of stuff, I might, reaching back thinking, probably have spent maybe, I don't know, 2-3 days producing a character for games that were being produced at that time. And now it would probably take me 2 or 3 months to produce a character for a new game like, say, for example, Killzone that's going to come out on PlayStation 3, because the fidelity is exponentially increased from going like, well, I've got 3 polygons to create that hand. Where shall I move those 3 polygons to make those little pointy things look most like fingers and thumbs? You know, and now it's kind of like, okay, yeah, that knuckle texture, does that need to be a little bit higher res? You know, it's just a complete sea change in what we're doing. So video games have gone from being like, you know, a small team of people, maybe, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, depending on the product, through to, you know, producing a game maybe in, say, a year or 2 years, depending, through to a team of 150 or maybe 200 people producing a game over 3, 4, maybe 5 years. So what it's become is just a massive kind of logistical exercise in how to crunch through the sheer number and the detail of each of the individual objects and characters and you know, elements that go up to make a video game in any sort of reasonable time frame that makes it remotely financially a worthwhile thing to do, I guess.
Is there also the issue that the lengths of time now may just be at the point at which the new developments are overtaking the amount of time it's taking to make the thing? Is there a kind of latency built into
it's something that we've always had to be mindful of, which is, you know, you embark on a product here, it's a kind of cool, hip idea at this point, you hope, and then, you know, you try and project forward into the future. We think this project's going to take 4 years to make. Is it still going to be funky and cool then as a concept? And also, yeah, is it going to be, you know, technologically still advanced enough that people get excited about it. Because I do see video games very much as technology driven. They always have been. You know, the first games that people really got interested in is like, oh, home computers, Sinclair, all that kind of stuff. When you used to stand in Dixon's and go, ooh, at the Commodore 64 latest games, you know, which I did with my dad. Yeah, I think there's definitely a peril in, you know, recognising the fact that you've got a certain lifespan for an exciting new technological piece of hardware like the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox, and you've got to get, you know, several games out during that life cycle, and how are you going to do that most efficiently? And obviously HD is a big part of that. But I don't see that people would consider like HD being kind of in any way like to blame for that. I think we view it as more an exciting challenge. HD offers all sorts of amazing possibilities visually. How do we manage that? How do we manage that?
Okay, well, in what ways? Okay, this does follow. In what ways does HD increase the pleasure of gameplay, or conversely decrease the pleasure of gameplay?
I mean, the thing about games is that they're massively diverse, and they do. Different people play different types of games as well. So say, for example, there's a guy who really loves his cars, and so the game that he really wants to play is Gran Turismo. So for him, what is the key thing about the Gran Turismo game? The key thing about the Gran Turismo game is the cars that he drives in that game look as much like the Ford Skyline or whatever it is that he really wants to drive in real life, but he can't afford to drive it. So from the point of view of games like that, where, you know, high resolution and realism are key, I think high definition would increase that particular individual, or, you know, that massive group of individuals like playing those kind of games, enjoyment of the game, just inherently on the basis that, like, wow, this is much more like driving a car. This looks much more like the real thing. Looks much more like the real experience. So I think there's those kind of games which definitely benefit from it. I think there's also potentially games like Heavenly Sword, where you've got, you know, video games, genuine attempts at full performance capture of actors, you know, Andy Serkis, playing a role, playing a character, and trying to immerse the viewers in that acting performance as you would do in a movie. That's a genuine attempt to do that, and, you know, high def facilitates that for us, basically, because it means that we can, you know, we have to do all sorts of fancy and, you know, intricate and difficult technological things in the background to make it happen. But fundamentally, once we've got that, we can then show people those actors up close, you know, with their kind of CG skins, in front of their performances that are bringing to life their performances, and show that to people in sufficient detail that people are engrossed by it. It's not just some, I don't know, to go back in the past, some little low poly character with a crudely textured mouth, with the mouth maybe wibbling up and down slightly, and then words coming out. You know, it's a very different experience. And so actually, I think for people, that sort of thing definitely could be enhanced by HD. But I think that the thing about video games is that you've always got a balance, again, between, you know, obviously how well the game plays, it is a game after all, and what the game looks like. So one of the potential dangers is that you spend longer and longer and more resources on the visual look of the game, but you have to make sure that obviously you equally expend the same amount of time and effort into the playability of the game. And it's easier to kind of, like, I think historically it's been easy to kind of staff up on the numbers of people, like, we can get all these great artists and stuff. And actually, you know, I think the video games industry now is very conscious of the fact that we need to supply a similar number of designers to crunch through the amount of design work that you need to get done as well. And I think perhaps at some points in the past, there has been a bit of a disparity there, and we have found it easier to staff up, you know, to fill up our artist quota than we have our designer quota. So there's a balance there with games between the visual look of it and the playability, definitely.
And when you do a bit of motion capture, or mocap, I heard it called
Mocap.
So you're taking some points on a face, and then on a high definition face, a real face, and you're putting a skin on it, which is high definition too, but in a different way. Do you then go back at any other point to the person that you've motion captured to integrate their comments into the process, or you just say thanks very much, now we'll take over from here? I'm just wondering about the definition, how the definition of the performance is possibly enhanced.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on that particular procedure, but I do know that, you know, the root of it really is, yeah, you've got Andy Serkis, you catch his performance, he's the director of the performances as well as acting it himself, so he's ensuring that the performances are what they should be in his eyes for the needs of the character. And then it's the job of the sort of the artists back in the video games company to technically, with blend shapes, etc., you know, facilitate the movements that were Andy Serkis's face occurring in the same way on the computer graphics face, if you see what I mean. And that's kind of the job. And then, you know, somebody like Andy Serkis may well see that, but at that point it's entered a kind of technological zone where he's just not sufficiently familiar to really help, I don't think, at that point. But obviously, you know, he would be able to judge whether his performance here was coming across as well on the character that's the CG version of him over here.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting thinking back in time to Ang Lee's messing around with the Hulk,
Yeah.
doing all the modelling for that, and Zemeckis' Werewolf, because that's kind of a...
Yeah, which I haven't seen yet, but yeah.
Yeah, two extremes of the same thing. So given all of that, and still thinking HD as much as one can, where do you see the next level of game? Not so much games play, but in relation to can you foresee what might be happening 5 or 10 years time? Given the pressure's on at the moment to be at 2K, 2000 pixels by 1000.
Yeah.
You know that one.
Yeah.
What do you see coming, or is it too close at the moment?
To be honest, I think the answer to that is I don't know. I really don't. I honestly don't know. Because I honestly think that I was just thinking back the other day and thinking about, as I said, the fidelity of old games. And I was thinking, even when I was playing that, each time I played the game, I was assessing it within the confines of what was expected. And so I would go, wow, that looks great. Isn't that brilliant the way the helicopter turns around? Isn't that great? And then now, obviously, looking back at it, you're like, you just can't believe how primitive it is. And I suspect that in that way, I'll be caught unawares again, you know, and that potentially the things that happen over the next 10 years, I will then look back on this conversation and just think to myself, you imaginative old arse, you couldn't even see then what it was that was going to happen with this stuff, you know. So I'm really not sure. All I know is that it seems to me to be a kind of exponential increase, but I view it in a very practical term. So to me, HD is kind of like, okay, great, we can make even better looking games, guys. Let's go to work, kind of thing. And that's kind of how I see it, really.
So my question was really about, does HD in any way, because of its requirement for veracity or clarity of artistic design, not games design, artistic design.
Yeah.
If you have a simple motion like a somersault, and there's a certain kind of AI that's involved in, or whatever it is that you use to control the moves, does the fact that the image quality betray the lack of ballet, if you like, in the physical, not the physical, but the movements of the characters? Is there a problem in that mix?
I think that in HD there is a constant issue of evaluation and iteration and checking stuff at the highest level. So you have to get the very finest animators to be kind of, you know, when they are doing their tumbling characters, and they have to be very, very anal in examining every little nuance of what it is that they're doing as part of that animation, knowing that, as I said before, when somebody playing, probably even more so viewing the game actually than when you're playing the game, because you're playing the game, you tend to actually get away with more because people are engrossed in the moment, and hopefully they are anyway, and what's going on in the game. But if you're actually watching the game, that's the moment where you go, oh, you were trying to show that really high detail, a little bit of animation there, but thanks to the very fidelity that you're using, I could actually see that there was a nasty little twitch or a nasty little twang that went on with her arm there, or that buckled, or that did that. So it does definitely present a whole range of kind of technical visual problems, absolutely. But you know, hopefully we have people of the highest abilities to tackle those things and spot them, and hopefully smoke and mirrors, we sneak a few through as well that people don't notice.
So fundamentally, though, you don't think that the increase and that sea change to HD has actually slightly blown your cover?
I don't think so, because I would like to think that we were aware it was coming, and we're aware that it's here now, and we're only going to get better at making sure that we do stuff that stands up to that kind of level of scrutiny and detail. And so for us, genuinely, I'm not just saying this, it is just an exciting proposition. We can now do, you know, everybody's an artist, and previously you had to produce, you know, I was drawing like textures 32 by 32 pixel textures. So I've come from university where you might be doing a giant painting on a canvas, and you come in and you're doing these tiny miniatures with tiny amounts of pixels, you know. So actually, to me, it's just kind of like, oh, you know, I'm an artist. Now I've got a decent sized canvas. to represent the art again. You know, so you've just come back to where you kind of, in a way, wanted to be in the first place, but you just couldn't be because of technical restrictions. So you developed a whole different set of languages and a whole different set of techniques, and you enjoyed being confined by those things in a way because you got good at working within those confines. But now it's opened and broadened up so much, I think artists are just like, woo! You know, what a relief.